All right, hello and welcome back to another tutorial in Maya. Today we're going to make some light streaks, and these light streaks are not just any average ordinary light streak. They will be able to illuminate a scene, so pretty cool stuff. We're going to be using Final Gathering in Mental Ray, and we'll create some light streaks like this and you know, see what they do in an environment that's sort of illuminated with Final Gathering techniques in Mental Ray. As you can see here, the blue light streaks leave some nice coloration to surfaces, and you know, everything in the scene kind of picks up what's going on with this lighting in these they're particles actually attached to an object and just attached to a motion path, and they're cruising through the scene like that. So that's pretty cool. Here I just have a texture attached to a sphere, and I altered the color just a little bit into the, you know, warmer brownish yellow spectrum, and this is sort of the effect that that gives. And I just added a simple JPEG there. So nothing complicated going on here, but you can see where it has all sorts of possibilities for, you know, using in a scene where a character might be walking around with a lantern or something like that, or you can attach these particles to vehicles or something cruising through space. So that's always cool. These light streaks are cool. So anyway, this tutorial was sort of it was suggested by a subscriber because he was watching a video tutorial over on Visual Effects Community. It's a German site. This is a German tutorial that was sort of explaining this same process, and he was just sort of having trouble getting some light into his scene and getting the objects lit correctly. And yeah, so this is a German site. They have a visual effects board over here through the website there, and lots of good stuff. They sort of have, so if you're in German, you're in luck. So anyway, we say Dankeschön to the Visual Effects Community. And as well, I say Dankeschön to Lester Banks. Because Lester has all sorts of stuff on his site, so go see him daily. Usually he has a roundup of all the coolest new tutorials in Maya and Cinema 4D and Blender, After Effects, Green Soda. So he's got all that. Go check him out daily because he's on the ball 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Thanks, Lester. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on in Maya. First of all, I'm going to show you sort of just a scene. Here's some particles. They're attached to a motion path, and I just have some basic geometry in the scene. A plane, sphere, you know, no big deal. Okay, so here's what it looks like in the render right now. And I'm showing you this early because I don't want to go back and start rendering stuff for this, but at a point you will get to, you'll notice this is a chrome sphere, and I have my particles cruising through here, and we can see the reflection of the you know, light streaks in the chrome itself in this reference sphere. And I want to show you sort of a couple of things to be aware of when you're, you know, fine-tuning this, because this is already sort of tuned. So basically I'm going to go back to this point right here, and that's about where I added this chrome substance to the sphere. So it's a highly reflective surface, and you want to make sure that your, you know, light streaks are seen in there. And you'll run into this if you have reflective surfaces. So first thing you want to do is just make sure after you start fine-tuning this that you choose your particles here. Let me just choose the particles over here in the outliner, and you'll notice that they're the render stats right here, okay, in your section of render stats, and that's in, you know, all of this stuff over here. You'll be in your end particle shape 1 and come down to your render stats, and you're going to see visible and reflections, visible and refractions. Well, that's the difference right there. If those are unchecked, you're going to get nothing. If those are checked, you're going to be able to actually see those going on there. Okay, so that's the first thing to be aware of. The next thing to be aware of is that I have an area light in this scene, and you'll be able to see that right here. I'm going to move this back and forth where visibility is on or off. Okay, so let's look at this area light real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the area light, and it'll drop down here into the bottom, and we'll probably have the same thing. Oh no, it's actually under visibility. when you're in here in your used light shape, in your area light, because we are going to have an area light in this scene. I just am using the light shape. It's a rectangle, and I have it visible. Well, if that was unchecked, you would not see it. So there it was unchecked. And now when you check visibility, you'll now be able to see that light in your reflections as well, which in most cases may or may not need it. I don't need it, so I'd rather just not see it. So I would just check, you know, check it like that. So anyway, just something to be aware of, okay? So let's get on with it and take a look at this, because it's gonna you're gonna need to get a cup of coffee, because this one might get long. I don't know. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the animation here. Set yourself up an animation of like 300 frames to begin with, and then create, you know, a sphere, some simple geometry. That's kind of what I have going right now. Nothing special. So you'll see also that I have an area light in here above the scene, and we're not going to add that yet. We'll sort of create some of this stuff from scratch. So essentially it just looks like this. I've got my light streaks cruising through there, and there they go. Okay, so with good camera moves and all sorts of stuff, you can make a really exciting, you know, light streak kind of scene. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So first, I think I'll just get rid of my basic sphere. Oh no, I'm going to choose my curve, and I'm going to choose this little pyramid object that's attached to that curve. And I think I'll take my particles too, and I'm just going to delete those. Okay, so now I basically just have a scene, and I think I'll take the area light off of there too. And we'll just take that area light and delete it. Alright, so now I just have some basic geometry. I'll go ahead and just hit the space bar once, go up into my main view there, and I think what I want to do is actually, you know, hover over this area, and I think instead of there we want to just do a 4 view. I'll hover it over here, hit the space bar again, and now I'm in my top view. So I'll just create a quick, just a quick CV curve, and just sort of, you know, do a randomized curve through here. It doesn't really matter. We're just using some of this geometry to see what it does as far as illuminating it. So once you have yourself a curve, you know, just hit enter. I'm going to hit the space bar again, go over here, hover, hit space bar again. I'm going to hit W on the keyboard, and I'm going to bring this guy up. Alright, and you know, you can do various things to your path here. I might want to scale it up a little bit, so I'll just hit the scale and go up like that. W on the keyboard, move it over a little bit, whatever. Okay, so you may even want to mess with your vertexes. You could go to your control vertex and maybe just choose one there, you know, some random ones. Yeah, we'll pick this one up here and just sort of move those up or down or whatever. That'll just give us a little bit of randomness to the curve, which is cool. All right, so now that you have that, we're going to basically right mouse click, go back into object mode, and I'm going to attach an object to this path. So first thing, we're going to want to create a, like, let's just start with a little cube, and go ahead and hit your options. And in this case, I just want small divisions, because I only want a few vertices. So we're going to go with a width of 1, a height of 1, and a depth of 1. And as I create that, I'll go over here and sort of make an object there. And let me get rid of this. Okay, focus in on that. Now, on this little object, you may want to go to your vertex, and I'll grab, say, these corner vertices. And there's only 4 of them on the top, so that's cool. And I may want to, say, just scale them down a little bit. I'll just hit R on the keyboard, kind of scale those down like that, and yeah, you know, you could do whatever you want. You could rotate them, you could do, you know, whatever. Our main thing here is that the light is going to emit from these various vertices. So, you know, get yourself something like that, and I'll just go back into object mode, and let's see what goes there. So with that object selected, go ahead and shift click onto your curve, and make sure you're in your animation menu set. Come over to animate and do a standard motion path attached to motion path maneuver there. Okay, so you know, it should look like this for you. Just got a little object cruising through there. All right, and there you go. So that's cool. We're almost there. With this object selected, we're going to assign some N particles. So if you go to your N dynamics set and come over to N particles, create N particles, and first come down and just check cloud. Click on cloud. Everything will go away. And then do this again. Come to N particles, create N particles, emit from object. Well, now we know that the cloud based shape is going to emit from our object. So we'll go ahead and click the options for a moment, and we'll go with defaults only. So right now I'm going to just hit edit, reset settings, and now I know that this is just default settings. So we're all going to get the same sort of thing. I'll go ahead and hit create. Well, now I'm going to come back, rewind to the beginning of the animation, and hit play. You'll see where, we have our object cruising through there. But look at what it's doing. It's emitting kind of a fog, because it is a cloud. It's a cloud particle. And we don't really want cloud-like particles with this. We want this to look more like, streaks of light. So let's fix that first. Let's select our particles. If you click on them there, and if you're not seeing them, hit 6 on your keyboard. That should, make them visible. And let's look at the first property of this this particle. You'll notice in your tabs you got your N particle shape 1. Well, here's all the default values. Everything's kind of starting out the way it will. And we'll notice that this is set on our emitter. You'll have two different portions of this, your particle shape and your emitter. And the emitter is kind of what we're interested in right now. I'm going to come up to the top of all these attributes, and you'll notice that the emitter type right now is set to omni. Well, we want to change that. We want to change it to directional. Now watch what happens. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and there it is. Okay, and we now have a directional, spill out. It looks like it's going along the lines of the curve, which is cool. That's what we want. Now, if we come over here while we're in this section, we're going to be aware that we have particles, and we have 100 that are assigned at default. So let's just leave that there for a second and get back into some more properties about these particles here. And they're really cool. We'll go to a particle shape, start up here at the top, and you'll notice that you have a particle size and a radius. That controls, how big that radius is overall. And it's consistent from front to back. Well, let's set the radius to maybe say right there. Set it about 0.2, and come down and look at our radius scale here. Well, you'll notice that on this side, this one also controls radius sort of exponentially to wherever this one is set. So, that's our maximum right there, but I could, mess around with this particle size in here. And that's cool because sometimes you may want to add another point in your radius. So if I click on that line up here on top and bring this level, click and hold, bring it down, you can now see where it tapers off in its radius. And that's relative to this positioning. So, if you bring that all the way in, you can sort of fine tune the actual size. So let's just stay with something maybe like this for the moment. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, we'll stay with that for the moment. Okay, so that's one thing that we kind of have to look at first before we do anything. And don't worry about the input max right now. And make sure your radius scale input is set at age. That's going to kind of be important in this exercise. All right, now the next thing we're interested in our attributes over here is the shading. And you can tell where clouds are what we have assigned. That's cool. And we'll just leave everything right there for the moment on default. But notice that you have an opacity scale here. And the opacity scale is going to control sort of what this looks like from front to back. Now, I'll do a new render just to sort of see where we're at here, because this is kind of interesting. Yeah, well, you'll notice that I'm not seeing anything right now because I've sort of had this project going a little bit ago. I started this before this tutorial, and that is due to my render settings. So if I bring my render settings up, by default, I have my enable default light turned off. I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on for a moment, and I think what I'm going to do here too is I'm going to uncheck my final gathering because we're not ready for that yet. So I'll do another render and Let's just see what happens. Okay, so I'm getting some light streaks through here. This is kind of what you should be seeing. I have that MIA material attached to here, which is a chrome. Right now I'm going to set this back to where I originally had it, just as a normal Lambert. And I'm going to do another render, and then we'll sort of be on the same page, I think. Alright, so this is cool. You can tell we have sort of something going on here. The default light's on. You can see our object, and that's good. Let's come over here and zoom in, kind of look at our particles for a second here, and you'll notice that they have the color, and the color is exactly sort of like what you see here, white into the blue, and that represents this white into this blue. Well, I'm going to switch this up because I kind of want my color to be kind of green in the front and blue as it tapers off. So I'll go ahead and make those changes. And this is, you can do as many points as you want. I'm going to just click on my blue right there and maybe switch it up something to more like a green, or actually this one was going to be the blue. So I'm going to go over here to blue. I'm going to pick kind of a deep blue like that, and then I'm going to choose this one right here, and I'm going to set that at a green. So kind of go in with that. Okay, now we'll do another render, see what it looks like. We're going to be doing quite a few renders, so I'm leaving this kind of small, but they go really quick, but they'll add up once we start to fine-tune this. Okay, well, I can see where my particles are a little large here, so I might want to bring that scale down a little bit on the radius. And let's see here, I'll bring this radius scale back a little bit from up here. And sometimes we need to be seeing what's going on over here, so that radius scale is big, kind of small. We'll stay with it like that for the moment. Also, I'll do another quick render just to make sure. Yeah, that looks a little better for what I'm going for here. Great, let's make some more adjustments. You'll notice that you see your actual object right here. Well, we want to get rid of that object because we just want this to be light streaks. So let's sort of choose that object. And in this case, it's a polycube. I like to go to the root of where it's at and come down and turn off its visibility from that root. And once I turn that visibility off and do another render, now it's looking a little better. All right. So we don't see that, and these become our light streaks. Okay, so let's make some more adjustments. I'm going to sort of choose my particles right here, and I'll come down and let's get our particles and get onto our particle shape. And I'm going to come down here and maybe give this a little less green on the front side here. And in order to do that, I'll just bring this level down a little bit here. That'll give us a little more blue, and you can see where it moves around. Like if I bring this all the way down, this starts to move. If I bring it all the way back, it's sort of in a even degradation there. So anyway, we'll give it like something like that and do another quick render. Lots of rendering with this. That's why these tutorials take time. Okay, well, that looks cool. I think I'll stay with that for the moment, but notice the gaps in between here. I kind of want to fix the gaps, and in order to get this to look more like a light streak and not just some bubbles going through some water there, I'm going to come up here and we're going to mess around with our emitter. And I'm going to, in this case, move my particles up from like say 100 to say 300. And I'll go back to the beginning of the animation just to get a fresh start. And now we can sort of see where those particles are. All right, now let's let it go a little bit. And there it is. Okay, but here's the problem. Even though I added more particles, I'll do another quick render right here. Added a bunch of particles, but we really don't want all this trailing effect going on. So how do we fix that? Well, we have to look at the particles, and we got to look at their lifespan. And in this case, let's go back to our particle shape. Let's come up here to the top, and let's look at lifespan right here. By default, it'll be set to live forever. Well, it may be better just to go with constant, and this will sort of give them a constant level of, I'll give them a constant lifespan of say a value of 2. And we'll go back to the beginning of the animation here, and see what happens. Okay, so now they're a little bit less, and let's try maybe giving them a value of maybe 1. Okay, I had that at 2. Let's see, we got this at yeah, let's go to 1 there. Let me do a quick playthrough. So they're fairly long. Let's give it a lifespan of 2, and let's see what happens there. Go back to the beginning. Now they're a little longer, and so on. So lifespan's important. I'm going to stick with maybe a lifespan of 1 up here. Looks like I'm stuck. Okay, let me press escape. All right. Yeah, it was my playback. Sometimes my playback gets going here, and it it gets bogged down with all this recording stuff. All right. So anyway, let's leave that constant lifespan at like 1 for the moment, and I'll go back to the beginning, do a little quick thing there, and I'll zoom in a little here, and we'll do a quick render. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm after right now. Now I could also taper this off a little bit if this is a little bit too long through here. I can bring my radius scale down and up a bit, and maybe just tighten it up to there if I just want little streaks. So there we go. Okay, now what's next, you may ask? Well, we want these things to sort of, you know, we want them to be illuminating and throwing off that color and looking really cool in here. And right now this is just looking sort of plain and blah. So at this point, we're going to introduce final gathering. All right. So if you check your render settings and come into your indirect lighting and just go ahead and check final gathering. And I'm going to leave that there, and I'm actually going to bring my diffuse scale down a bit here, because this is something I'm going to show you later. I'm going to just give it a value of 1. All right, because I had that set from my last renders. So now I'm at default where you should be. So go ahead and do another render after you enable final gathering, and I'll just sort of do that. Okay, well, it looks a little different, and you'll notice some strangeness going on here. Generally, we wouldn't be seeing light emanating from like an object touching, you know, a plane. That would normally be a shadow. So that's the first thing that's wrong, and we'll get to fixing that. So let's take a look at what's happening here. This is illuminated with that default light, and you'll recall I had to reset that default light. Let's see here if I can get back into my, I'm going to come over here into my render settings and go to the common section, and that's where that enable default light. Now that's making a difference. I'm going to turn that default light off, and I'm going to come back over here, and we're going to do another render. And right away, this is probably where you're at, or what will happen when you turn off this enable default light. Because essentially we've turned off the lights and we're waiting for mental ray to be told, hey, I have a light that is emitting some incandescent values here that you need to be aware of. So let's take a look at that. What happens is the color in the shading. This is what we used to have right here with the normal lighting. But since we enabled final gather, our color and our values of the light are going to be sort of in this section, in the incandescent section. And right now you can see where the color is basically at black, and that's what I'm getting there. So I want to copy these colors and sort of paste them in here for the moment and see what happens. So if I click on my first black right here, click on that, I'll go ahead and click on the eyedropper, and I want to come up here and I want to put that over the green and click on it, and now I have green. And then I want to click on this line somewhere, and we'll just sort of match this one out to kind of where it's at there. And I want to click on this green, go for the eyedropper, and come up and copy this blue. Okay, so now I have, you know, this is what I have now. I'm going to go ahead and do a render. And hopefully, if all goes well, we'll see our light streaks. Okay, well those don't look quite the way we want them to. And that's because there's one critical thing on this incandescence. If this is set at constant, it's basically just going to give us a constant color, depending on where we have everything set. So in order to switch that up, I want to sort of be more in line with our age. So age is what we're looking at for that. So I'll go ahead and do another render after I did the age adjustment. Okay, and now you can see that's pretty cool. That's what we're looking at there. And yeah, so we're getting a good looking light streak, but we're not seeing any of that geometry in the scene now. So how do we fix that? Well, there's a couple of different things that you can do, and we'll get to those as we go along here. I think the first thing to be aware of is that in your render settings over here, you'll have your render settings, and in your indirect lighting section, in the final gathering section, you're going to see something for what's known as the primary diffuse scale. So I'm going to click that, and it usually starts at default. It has a value of 1. And if you don't have, if yours is on RGB, just come over into this drop down menu and switch it over to HSV, hue, saturation, and value. And now that's your default is 1. Well, I'm going to take that up to say 10 and see what happens. So I'll take that value up to 10. And right away you see it's starting to illuminate. And that's because that overall environment value was set too low. So I think I'll stay with, I'll go to 15. All right, so we'll go back to this primary diffuse scale, and let's give it a little more juice. And I'm going to take it up to 15. And yeah, let's see what happens there. All right, so there it is. Now we have some good stuff going on. Well, let's look at sort of how to make some other adjustments to this. Maybe put a light in here and see what happens when we add a light. Because we don't have any physical lights in here, we may want to have a light that sort of gives us an even balanced kind of tone. So I'm going to bring this stuff over here, and we'll go back and add that area light. All right, so I'm going to come up and create a normal area light, and in this case I'll just bring it up. It's hiding out down there. I'm going to bring it up and maybe scale it a bit. Let's see, let's give that some scale, and I think I'll rotate it downward. So I'm just hitting W, E, and R on my keyboard to switch between the tools. So W. All right, so I'll just sort of leave it like that for the moment. It looks like it's covering the scene fairly well. Might want to give it a little bit more scale, so I might scale it up a bit. And there we go. So let's come down onto a view and kind of see what's happening with that. And I might scale my plane up a little more, just for grins. Okay, so now we have this area light in here at default. We'll do another render and see what happens. All right, so it looks all messed up now, and technically it is. So let's take a look at that light. I'm gonna go ahead and get onto that area light from my outliner there. And you could do a couple of things. You could lower its value up here, its intensity. Right now it's at 1. Let's just try lowering it down to say maybe 0.125. Do a quick render. And by going down that low, you'll see where, okay, now it's looking kind of right. That looks kind of better. But really weird stuff happening right here. And that's going to be kind of a battle for a minute or two. We got to figure out kind of where that's coming from. I mean, the area light is bouncing light down and up, and you know, this surface is sort of acting as a magnifier for that light, but it's not being picked up on here. So let's work with balancing this a little better. Let's say we take this area light and we'll add some decay to it. Let's add some quadratic decay and maybe take the emit specular off. And you know, its intensity is pretty low right now, so I'll go ahead and do another quick render. And now, you know, by adding that decay, everything sort of comes back down into the values where it should be, but it still doesn't look too good. And you know, I'm not really wouldn't really want to play with it like that. So let's turn this area light into an area light that's like, say, more Maya friendly in this case. I'm going to go ahead and enable my ray trace shadows, and I'm going to come down to the area light and use light shape. Alright, now that we have the rectangle, it's a light shape, let's go ahead and do another quick render and kind of see where we're at. Okay, now I can't really see much of the geometry there, so let's readjust our intensity a little bit here. I'm just going to bring that intensity up to like 6 or something like that, and just sort of slowly work it up and see what kind of see what kind of difference it has. Now it's kind of lightened pretty well there. Let's go back up, maybe take this to like 15 or something like that. Let's see what 15 does. Alright, so it's starting to do its job there, and it's looking pretty good. And you'll notice that there's sort of a dirty look, like these look like shadows, but if you had texturing on there, it might not make that much of a difference. But right now, this is caused by our settings. And if you look in your indirect lighting, your accuracy for your final gathering, I've got it set at like 1,000 now. By default, it's normally set at like 10 or something like that, so, or 100. I think it's set at 100. So let's look at what 100 would be looking like. Yeah, so it has a lot more, the lower this value is on your accuracy, the more kind of strange weirdness you're going to get going on with that. All right, so just be aware of that. But when you add time, I'm going to switch this up to 1,000. Depending on what you're doing, this could add a lot of time to your renders, depending on all your surfaces and materials and textures and things. But in this case, it didn't add that much, so it cleaned that up a little bit, so I guess I can live with that. All right, now the next thing we need to look at is sort of like the glow. Right now, these are lights, and they sort of have a glow, a self-illuminating glow to them. But we may want to make them look a little different. So remember that this over here in your hypershade, this particle cloud is what we're working with that's attached to the particles. So it's actually the color of these particles. So that's where you're going to find this glow intensity and density. So let's look at those two for the moment. Go ahead and check on, make sure you have your choose tool, make sure that this is active on your cloud, NP cloud volume, and we'll take a look at these properties. Glow intensity, if you bring the glow intensity up, right now it's at default 1.94 or something like that. I'll go ahead and bring this glow intensity up. Or actually for you it might be set at 1 or 0 or something like that, I don't know. And there you go. So I've now adjusted the glow, and it's glowing a little bit more in there. I could bring that down quite a bit and see what happens when I take my glow on and off. Just be aware that that's a good setting to go to get more glow or less glow. So I kind of like it like that, but I may add a little more glow. My density is set at 2. Let's go ahead and pump this density up to say like 4. Take a look at that. Those two, these have a lot of effect on the overall look. So it's all about fine tuning, and you will spend hours fine tuning this stuff. So, all right. Well, that looks like it's getting a little better. Now let's take a look at maybe one last thing here. I'm going to come back into my overall Lambert on this plane. Right now I have an illuminated Lambert going on here, and depending on what the value is here, that's where it's set right now. My ambience is down and my ambient color is down. I'm going to bring those up a little bit, and we'll do a quick render, and I'm going to show you kind of what that has to do with everything. Technically this illuminated Lambert is going to be adding light to the scene as well. So by adjusting that, you can start to sort of get rid of some of the, the weirdness going on around where the columns meet the plane. You can mess around with the diffuse values and whatnot, and they will have a big difference on the overall look of the scene. But, you know, once again, this is a specialty material, so if you're just playing around with normal Lamberts, you should get something looking like that. So, okay, I think I covered it all. And go get busy. Start doing some light streaking. Yeah, and if there's anything else, I might do an update to this tutorial if I figure some more stuff out. But, you know, play around with that and do some renders. And, yeah, have a great weekend, all right? So thanks for watching. As always, read the owner's manual. Get the Maya books and read. There's so much info in there. And also be a good person all day, every day. All right, thanks for watching.